the Soviet Union, a name that still evokes strong emotions, a mixture of awe and fear. For much of the 20th century, this vast nation loomed large, a communist giant challenging the capitalist West. From its triumph in World War II to its role in the space race, the Soviet Union's influence was undeniable. Its economic system, a radical departure from the norm, promised equality and prosperity for all. But at what cost? The Soviet Union's story is one of ambition, ideology, and ultimately, failure. Its rise and fall offer profound lessons for the world, reminding us of the complexities of economic systems and the human cost of utopian dreams. Understanding the Soviet experience is crucial, not to demonize or glorify, but to learn from the past and navigate the challenges of the present. The Soviet Union's impact extended far beyond its borders. It inspired socialist movements worldwide, becoming a beacon of hope for some and a source of anxiety for others. Its economic model, with its emphasis on central planning and state control, was studied and debated by economists and policymakers globally. The Soviet Union's story is a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most ambitious experiments can have unintended consequences. At the heart of the Soviet system lay a radical idea, a centrally planned economy. Unlike capitalist economies, where supply and demand dictate production and prices, the Soviet government controlled virtually every aspect of economic life. Factories churned out goods according to quotas set by bureaucrats, not consumer demand. Farmers worked on collective farms, their harvests dictated by the state. This system, in theory, aimed to create a more equitable society, free from the exploitation and inequality inherent in capitalism. However, the reality proved far more complex. While the Soviet Union achieved significant industrial growth in its early decades, its command economy suffered from inherent flaws. Central planners, despite their best intentions, struggled to predict and respond to the ever-changing needs of a vast and diverse population. Innovation was stifled, as individuals had little incentive to take risks or develop new ideas. The result was a system plagued by shortages, inefficiencies, and a lack of consumer choice. The Soviet economy, despite its shortcomings, did achieve some notable successes. It provided universal healthcare, education, and employment. It made significant strides in science and technology, launching the first satellite Sputnik into orbit and putting the first man in space. However, these achievements came at a high price, often achieved through coercion and the suppression of individual liberties. The Soviet Union's impact on global politics was profound and far-reaching. It emerged from World War II as a superpower, its military might rivaling that of the United States. The ensuing Cold War, a decades-long ideological and geopolitical struggle, shaped the international landscape. The world watched nervously as the two superpowers engaged in a dangerous arms race, each side possessing enough nuclear weapons to annihilate the other many times over. Beyond military might, the Soviet Union exerted its influence through its support for communist movements and regimes around the world. From Cuba to Vietnam, the Soviet Union provided economic and military aid to countries seeking to overthrow capitalist governments. This support often fueled proxy wars, with the superpowers backing opposing sides in conflicts across the globe. The Cold War was a time of high tension, with the threat of nuclear annihilation casting a long shadow over the world. The Soviet Union's collapse in 1991 marked the end of an era. The Cold War came to an end, and with it, the bipolar world order that had defined international relations for decades. The collapse of the Soviet Union had profound implications for the global balance of power, leaving the United States as the sole superpower. Section 4. Cracks in the facade, the unraveling of an economic system. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union's economic problems had reached a critical mass. Decades of central planning had created a bloated and inefficient bureaucracy, unable to keep pace with the demands of a modern economy. The gap between the Soviet Union and the West, particularly in terms of technology and living standards, continued to widen. The Soviet people, once promised a worker's paradise, faced increasing shortages of basic goods, from food to clothing to consumer electronics. The Chernobyl disaster of 1986 exposed the weaknesses of the Soviet system for all to see. The government's initial attempts to cover up the disaster, followed by its inadequate response, highlighted the lack of transparency and accountability within the Soviet system. The disaster also revealed the environmental costs of the Soviet Union's relentless pursuit of industrial growth, further eroding public trust in the government. Mikhail Gorbachev's rise to power in 1985 marked a turning point in Soviet history. Gorbachev, recognizing the dire state of the Soviet Union, initiated a series of reforms known as perestroika, or restructuring, and glasnost, or openness. These reforms, aimed at revitalizing the stagnant Soviet economy and introducing greater political freedoms, ultimately proved to be too little, too late. Section 5. Echoes of the Past. The Soviet Legacy in Today's World. The Soviet Union may be gone, but its legacy continues to shape the world we live in today. The collapse of the Soviet Union led to the emergence of new nation-states, each grappling with the challenges of transitioning to democracy and market economies. The transition was often turbulent, marked by economic hardship, political instability, and ethnic conflicts. The scars of the Soviet past continue to shape the political landscape of many former Soviet republics, influencing their relations with Russia and the West. The Soviet experience also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked state power and the importance of individual liberty. The Soviet Union's history reminds us that even the most well-intentioned ideologies can be twisted to serve authoritarian ends. The lessons of the Soviet Union are particularly relevant in an era of rising nationalism, populism, and authoritarianism, reminding us of the fragility of democratic institutions and the need to safeguard individual rights. The Soviet Union's economic legacy is a mixed bag. On the one hand, its emphasis on social welfare programs, such as universal healthcare and education, continues to resonate with many. On the other hand, its centralized planning and lack of economic freedom serve as a stark reminder of the importance of market forces and individual initiative in driving economic growth and prosperity. Section 6. Lessons learned. Avoiding the pitfalls of centralization. The Soviet experience offers valuable lessons for policymakers and economists today. The Soviet Union's centralized planning system, while initially successful in driving industrial growth, ultimately proved to be unsustainable. The lack of market mechanisms, such as price signals and competition, led to inefficiencies, shortages, and a lack of innovation. The Soviet experience highlights the importance of finding a balance between state intervention and market forces in creating a thriving economy. The Soviet Union's collapse also underscores the importance of economic freedom in fostering prosperity and stability. When individuals are free to pursue their own economic interests, to innovate and to take risks, societies tend to be more prosperous and dynamic. Conversely, when governments stifle economic freedom, they risk creating a climate of stagnation and resentment, as the Soviet experience demonstrates. The Soviet Union's legacy reminds us that economic systems are not static. They are constantly evolving. The challenge for policymakers is to find a balance between promoting economic growth, ensuring social equity, and safeguarding individual liberty. Section 7. The Future of Economic Systems. Finding a sustainable path. The search for a perfect economic system is an ongoing quest. The Soviet Union's experiment with a centrally planned economy, while ultimately unsuccessful, offers valuable insights into the complexities of economic management. The challenge for today's policymakers is to learn from the mistakes of the past while adapting to the challenges of the present. The rise of globalization, technological advancements, and climate change are creating new economic realities that require innovative solutions. Finding a sustainable path forward requires a nuanced understanding of both the benefits and limitations of market forces, government intervention, and individual initiative. The Soviet experience, both its successes and failures, can serve as a valuable guide as we navigate the complexities of the 21st century. The future of economic systems will likely involve a hybrid approach, one that harnesses the power of market forces while ensuring social equity and environmental sustainability. The key lies in finding the right balance, one that promotes innovation, empowers individuals, and creates a more just and prosperous world for all.